PURVIS, who is the founder of a nonprofit down in Guatemala, a great organization doing amazing work. And so we're here to talk to her about her amazing journey. Welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Z. It's good to be here.
Awesome. And so, Mary, tell us about you. What's your backstory and you know, a little bit about your journey. Tell us a little bit about your backstory.
My journey actually started when I was a baby. My parents moved to Mexico to be missionaries. And I was 9 months old, so I learned Spanish, I learned the culture, and just fell in love with Hispanic people. So when I started going to Guatemala in 1990, it just was so easy to love the people. And so in the year 2000, I went to where I'm living now in Guatemala and fell in love with the Achi Indians. And it was just, it was a love that I can't explain, just it was there. And probably, you know, from my whole childhood growing up with Hispanic people eating tortillas and beans, tripping over pigs when you walk in the door, things like that. So,
awesome. And take us and tell us a little bit about what took you to Guatemala in 1990, you said.
The first time I went to Guatemala, I went with a group called Extended Hands. They're I don't know if they still are in existence or not. They were out of Michigan, and we went with them. They built houses for widows and orphans, and that's who I went with the first time. Now, my interest in living there came in the year 2000. My cousin had adopted a Guatemalan orphan named Dominga. And she was getting older. She joined our family when she was 11. But when she got older, she wanted to go back and find her roots. And I helped her do that. And that just kind of piqued my interest in moving to Guatemala.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That sounds amazing. And so how was you trying to help her out finding her roots? How was that story?
It started out pretty slowly. We did a lot of research online, but back then internet was just getting started good, so there wasn't as much information as there is now. And we kept searching and searching and writing to people, and we found this one article called The Massacres in Rabinal. And as I read that story, I thought to myself, this sounds like what the stories Dominga's been telling me all these years. So I wrote to the guy that wrote that article. He was in Florida, and just started asking him questions. And he's the one that had already been to Guatemala. He had been at some of the exhumations of the massacres from 1982. And he's the one that said Dominga has aunts, uncles, and cousins that have been looking for her for years. So that was an exciting thing. And we went back the end of May 2000, and she got to meet her aunts and uncles and cousins that still are alive. Pretty cool.
Wow, that is such a cool story. That is amazing. And so just so that I understand, and everybody who's hearing understands, and so Dominga was adopted, and she was your cousin. Then it became your cousin. She became your cousin, and then she grew up in this area. Or tell us a little bit about that. Did she grow up in this area? And
Dominga was born in Rio Negro, which is a remote village in Guatemala, and she would live there till she was 9 years old. When she was 9, there were a series of 5 massacres in her village, and her dad was killed on February 13th, 1982. A month later, her mother was killed in the same village, Rio Negro. And at that point, she was hidden in the mountains for a few months with some of her relatives, and then sent to live with the nuns, and from there sent to an orphanage, and from there sent to the United States. And my cousin was living in Iowa at the time, and she couldn't have children, her and her husband, and they decided to adopt this little orphan from Guatemala. That's how she became part of our family.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's an amazing story. And then when you went down there, what ignited in you? What is it that you wanted to accomplish when, you know, when you were down there and that journey started for you?
When I first went to that part of Guatemala and met people from Rio Negro, people from Pacush, the poverty is what really struck me. And it's not that the people are lazy, they're hard workers. They just, because of the massacres in the early 80s, a whole generation of people were not able to get an education. Therefore, their jobs were so menial and paid so little that their children couldn't go to school because there wasn't enough money to send them to school. And so I wanted to start a feeding program, first of all, to help feed the starving children and the starving grandparents also, because they were too old to get jobs. And I wanted to start a student program where we would help kids go to school that couldn't afford to go to school, but they really wanted to. And so those were two of the things I wanted to do when I moved down there. The other thing was I wanted to be a landing zone for teams that want to come down there and do whatever service projects they had in mind, such as medical teams, dental teams, clothing and shoe distribution. We've had all kinds of stuff going on.
And so when you started this journey, the main problem that you saw was all of those issues that you mentioned, where the elderly people were having a hard time and the kids were having a hard time, and a lot of in education. Am I correct in saying that those were the main problems that you saw?
Correct. Poverty, kids going to bed hungry, lack of education, lack of enough money to buy food for the family. And so like an old person can't go to work. So now if a family has 3 eggs to feed 8 people, but grandma and grandpa live with them, now those 3 eggs have to feed 10 people. And so that the extreme poverty, and there might be clinics available that they can go to, but there's no medicine in the clinics. They have to buy that separately. And so there's problems like that that really got my attention.
Wow. And at one point, when you saw all of these problems, at one point, did you have an epiphany or a moment of saying, you know, there is something here that I need to do? Or, you know, how was that moment for you?
Well, it was pretty clear. I had wanted to live in Guatemala for a long time, but for whatever reason, it just had never happened. But in the year 2010, I went and spent a month in Rapinal, visited Rio Negro, visited Pacush every day, things like that. And after my month in Guatemala, I came back to the States, and I just had about a week where I couldn't sleep, I couldn't eat. My brain was going 90 to nothing, thinking about all the things I had seen when I was down there. My kids were grown, out of the home. I had a good job. I was owner of a company where hopefully my company could help support me if I moved there. And I just decided the time was just right, and I was going to move and see what I could do to make a difference.
Oh, what was that? That's amazing. And so what was your plan when you left? What did you have planned?
I actually did have a very clear plan. I took kind of a course on moving to a foreign country, and they had us write out our plan. And my plan was start a feeding program, find sponsors to help students go to school that wanted to study but couldn't afford it. And number 3, a landing zone for people to come down and help me do everything that needs to be done down there. And so that was my plan, those 3 things. And I had them written out. Anyway, there's a whole lot more details to that class, but that's the gist of it.
And what was the, it seemed like when you were mentioning that there was some details about that class that might have helped you a lot or had a very impactful, or were very impactful on you. Was there anything that when you went through that process, was there anything really impactful that you remember?
The one thing I really remember from that class, one of the first things I learned was they taught us their definition of destiny. They said, destiny is your non-transferable assignment from God. And I'm a born-again Christian, you know that. And I understood so clearly that we each have something that God wants us to do. Our life is not just to eat and sleep and work. There's got to be a purpose, and nobody else can do it for us. It's our assignment, and we can't transfer it. I can't ask my brother to do it for me. I can't ask my twin. If I had a twin, we each have something we are destined to do. And, you know, I guess even for those that, excuse me, that don't believe in God, I know most people believe in a higher power. I believe we're not here by accident. I believe we're all here for a purpose and with a purpose. And I felt like that was real key for me. The other thing that they told us in that class, they said, if you're going to go move to a foreign country, don't camp, move. Like, don't just go and think, well, I'll try it for 6 months. If it works, I'll come home. No, you need to make a decision and you need to move. And that's what I did. I moved. I sold my house, gave my car to my daughter, gave all my possessions away, gave my company to my brother, and I cut all my ties here in the United States other than family. They're still my family. But I left everything.
Wow. And what an amazing journey that was.
It's been a kicker.
And then when you started on that process, what was the conflict that you experienced? What was kind of some of the most impactful conflicts that you had?
One of the big conflicts I had was leaving family. And I'm not going to cry. I'm a crybaby sometimes, but it's really, really hard to leave family, especially when you choose to leave them. You know, if for some reason you're forced to leave and there's nothing you can do about it, but I chose to leave my elderly dad, my children, my grandchildren. My children were no longer at home. They were all nearly 30 or older, but it's hard to leave family. It really is.
Wow. And now that, you know, you've done amazing work there in Guatemala and you're continuing to do so, and, you know, from your perspective, what have you achieved so far? Like, what have you, in your eyes, you know, what have you achieved so far there?
Oh my goodness. And I really, truly don't mean it as bragging, because God has helped me each step of the way. But I do have a feeding program in Pacush. We've got this year coming up, 2018, we've got 48 elderly people that will be eating there and 80 children. They eat a hot meal there each day, Monday through Friday. Each one of them is sponsored by somebody, $25 a month to sponsor a child or a grandparent, we call them. That's one of the things I've done, and that's probably the biggest. I mean, it's the most, what's the right word for you can see it? It's most tangible. And then the other thing is a student sponsorship program where we find sponsors to help kids go to school. That's a little pricier. It's $40 a month, but it helps a student go to school, gets their uniform, their books, their pays for typing and computer classes, which is extra. It just takes care of the whole tuition, enrollment, all that kind of stuff. And then there's been a whole bunch of little projects we've done. We've done excellent work in some villages like Rio Negro, Chitucan, Cancun, Nimacabaj, different ones, villages around there, taking in medical teams, providing much, much needed medical care. I believe we've saved lives. I believe you've saved lives in Rio Negro. And we've taken clothes and shoes, and we've also given people jobs. We've provided an opportunity for women to make weavings and sell them, or I provided jobs through the feeding program, things like that.
Wow.
I think it's been a lot.
Oh yes, absolutely. And I'm sure so much that you can think of, and so many impacts that you've done. What's one of the stories from the sponsorship program, for instance, that come to mind that you've done? Because you've been there for many years now, and I'm sure some kids have gone through that. And so, if one of those stories, you know, that you remember that
Oh,
have impacted you.
oh, there's a lot of stories. Boy, I'd need several more hours, but one that really comes to mind is when I first moved there, there was a young lady in her 20s, and her husband had just been shot and killed. Annalicia is her name. And she had two little kids, a 3-year-old and a 3-year-old and a 7-year-old. Her husband just got killed. She's a widow. And she came to work for me as my housekeeper. But I kept encouraging her to go to school. I got her a sponsor. She stayed in school. I gave her time off whenever she needed to go to classes or do homework and all that. Now she's out of college, and she no longer works as my housekeeper. She's about to get a whole different kind of a job that's not a maid. So I'm real proud of her and how she's done. I also have a lot of students that come back and visit me. Now they're police officers, they're teachers, they work in banks. We're beginning to see the results of these sponsorships. So that's really exciting.
That is amazing. What an awesome legacy.
Yeah.
That's so cool. And what if we were to meet the Mary on the streets, you know, before she went on this journey down there, and the Mary now, you know, how would you say she's different? How would you say what type of transformation has she had?
Oh boy, that's a tough one. Probably the old Mary was a lot more selfish. I thought a lot more about me and what I wanted. I wanted a house, I wanted a car, I wanted, you know, success by the world standards. And now it's just a whole different thing. I just can see that those things are so temporary and they're so unimportant. And I still go and get a mani-pedi every once in a while. But those things just really don't matter. And down there, I dress like a missionary. I wear these long skirts so that I fit in with the women. It's just, and it doesn't matter. I could easily be on what not to wear, I'm sure.
That's awesome.
When I'm down, I got them all.
That's great. And what's next for you? What's next for Mary? I know you have multiple projects and writings and, you know, and books that you've published already. And so what's next for you?
I'm excited about 2018 because, and I haven't really even announced this to the world yet. So you're one of the first ones. I've told people that I'm really close to. We have put a down payment on some land, and we're going to buy some land, and we're going to build the landing zone. We're going to build a place where teams can come work. We're going to build a place where kids can come do their homework. Teams can stay if we have enough room. It depends on the size of the team. We can do medical clinics there. We want to just have a place where the kids can play soccer, and a place where they can come and hang out, where they can be understood, where they aren't as tempted to get in the gangs. Like there's someone that'll listen to them and love them and care for them. And that's right. And the entrance of Pacush on the right, there is a field there where the kids used to play soccer, and there's several trees there. Just put a down payment on it about a week ago. So,
wow.
yeah, and I don't know where the rest of the money's coming from, but God knows. So I'm excited about that. And hopefully by the end of the year, it'll be built and up and running, and we'll need volunteers to help run the place. And it's an exciting new day.
Wow, that sounds like an awesome year for you. And like you commit, find a way, and it'll work out, and you always make it work out, and everything, people coming together. So I'm excited to go down there and check that out.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, Mary, thank you so much for doing this interview with us. We've learned so much and inspired, and just what you're gonna do in 2018 is gonna be amazing. And so, looking forward for that.
Well, thank you, Andres, for Dr. Z, for letting me, for interviewing me, and let me know where I can watch myself, because I might want to see what I look like on TV, on the internet. So anyway, thank you, though, for thinking about me and interviewing me.
Yeah, awesome. You are the first interview that we'll be putting on the YouTube channel and on the Facebook page of Samasta Health Foundation. And so you can see it there. And so, yeah, we'll be doing more of this with more amazing people that are doing awesome work all over the world. So that should be interesting. And so you're the first one.
Well, thank you for coming to Guatemala and working side by side with me. You've seen my missionary skirts. Thank you for saving Juan Luscap's life when he had that whole thing going on, and for being willing to trek across mountains to help the sick people. Thank you so much. I know what you've done, and it's amazing. So I thank you and Samasta and all the work that you guys are doing, and I'm excited to work with you guys too.